above our rights, to prove we will over all. Prevail in union, strong success is sure. We cannot fail. All hail Liberia. In union, strong success is sure. We cannot fail. Why? With God above our rights to prove we will over all. Prevail all circumstances, all foe prevailing. In fact, another phrase says, with hearts and hands, our country cause defending, we meet the foe with valor unpretending. Like in my last episode, I said, we're not jabbing it here. In the Liberian way, we're not jabbing it. We will meet the foe with valor unpretending. Long live Liberia, happy land. This glorious land of liberty will forever be ours. We will never be driven out of our homes again by God's command. And today, I'm excited because I have a great man of God, a great friend of mine. I have known him for years and years. I first heard him speak a few years ago, and I said to myself, he's going to be my friend. And God just made it, and it just worked out. And today, he's my guest today. He's the Honorable Apostle Alphonso Abayormi Dean. He's an orator. He's an author, a conference speaker, and the presiding prelate and senior pastor of the Christian Missionary Assembly right around the oldest Congo town area. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome my guest, the Apostle Dean.
Amen.
God bless
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here. I also want to just thank God for you and for the desire to develop this aspect of ministry where we're not just congregating, but you are identifying individuals who will bring forth our true identity through these kind of historical events.
Yes.
Especially with emphasis on our national anthem and the anthem.
Yeah.
I heard you just speaking with that much passion.
Oh, God.
I know you are. So and my prayer has always been that Liberians will begin to be patriotic as they approach, as they listen, as we live our life as Liberians.
Yes.
And I'm glad. So thank you for having me today, and I'm glad to be here.
God bless you, sir. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, again, to all Liberians, I'm glad to be with you. It is very important that every Liberian, whoever you are, as long as you are a Liberian, born Liberian, we reach a very critical point where we need to know where we come from. We need to know our identity, and we need to know where the Lord is taking us.
Yes.
Many things have happened over the years, from 1986 to now, when the Constitution was changed. I have developed my own thought about it. Like I said to you the other day, a mistake on your birth certificate does not change your identity.
Change your identity. Oh, I love
So
that.
I believe that it is this identity fight to set the pace right that we are here today.
Yes, sir.
So let me begin with what you just started with, the national anthem. That national anthem is one anthem that I love. In fact, the guy who wrote the lyrics of it is one of the best presidents we have.
The third president,
of
the Republic.
Daniel Bashir
Wonder.
became president. In fact, he wrote that anthem before he became president.
Wow.
Yeah. Daniel Bashir was one of those, April 19, 1815 he was born. He died 1880. And he was the third president of Liberia from 1864 to 1868.
Yes.
But prior to that, he was the fifth vice president under Stephen Allen Benson.
Okay.
Yeah, 1860 to 1864.
Yes,
he was the fifth vice president. Then in 1860, he served as the Secretary of State in the cabinet of Joseph Jenkins Roberts. Yeah, he has been a powerful guy.
Joseph Jenkins Roberts, our first president.
The first president, that guy was the Secretary of State. Daniel Warner was the Secretary of State in his cabinet.
So let's just pause there.
Yeah.
He rose through the ranks.
Through the ranks. So he knew. He was one of those guys who knew it, even though he was born in Baltimore, but he was a black guy who came here with that color man,
yes,
who saw this home as his home. So he wrote that anthem, and he wrote the lyrics of the anthem.
Yeah.
But the music was added by Osman Lucas.
Yes.
Osman Lucas came in 1825. So Osman Lucas added the music, and when they listened to it, there were several other anthems that were given. Yeah. One was done by Greenfield, the guy who wrote our Constitution. Okay. Samuel Greenfield, who was teaching at Harvard University, he wrote the Constitution. He also presented an anthem. But when they compared the two, in 1947, we adopted this one. And my line there is the land of glorious liberty by God's command. And it's from there I want to start speaking to you this morning.
Go ahead, sir.
The glorious land of liberty by God's command. And I underline that word, God's command. Every Liberian underline that word. Right now where we are, the Constitution says we are secular.
Right now.
1986, a new constitution was developed under the leadership of B.N. Kessley, and that constitution was accepted, and that constitution declared us a secular state. And in actual sense, secularism means no God, even though politicians try to impress it and make it look like inclusion of religion. But if you check the actual dictionary meaning, it means there's no God. We subscribe to no God, so there is no deity to which we pledge our allegiance. And I think it's a disservice to the country. So it is our responsibility to raise a generation who will not forget where we come from. So let's go back. A glorious land of liberty by God's command. Where did we come from? How did we become a nation? Where are we today? Permit me to just spend some time with you and bring your children, bring your generation to hear what I'm about to say. Because this has been a burden on me. A glorious land of liberty by God's command. Commanded by God.
Yeah.
Now will be. Was already commanded by God.
Yeah.
How did it come to be? Liberia has 3 birthdays. All of you follow me closely. 1816, Liberia was declared. Let's go back to the history. During the 1700, there was this transatlantic slave trade. I don't have to tell you history, but this slave trade took slaves from Africa over to America.
Yeah.
During the 1615, 1600, before we got to the 1700, industrial revolution, there was this industrial revolution. Yeah. They began to make machines to do what men were doing on the cotton field. So they didn't need men anymore. So many slave masters began to release the slaves began to buy their freedom. And by the time the 1780, America did her first census, the slaves that were free were about 58,466 of them. They said, where do we place these slaves? They sent them to Missouri, Louisiana. That was the first black state established in America for the settlement of black free slaves. So they grew up there. By the time America did the second census, the 1820, they were now 186,466. It was like, these guys are growing. Let's find a way for them. 2 decades later, they became 488,000. It was then that the American government decided, let's resettle them. Let's find a home for them, somewhere in Africa. Some blacks who knew where they came from, who started trying to trace their background, formed little NGOs to facilitate that process. So there were 3 NGOs formed. We learned that in school, but just for your reminder, there were 3 major NGOs formed. Those NGOs were formed with the basis of making sure that they will receive support from the government to relocate, repatriate, or find a home for the slaves who are becoming political threat to the American government. One of the group was called the New York Pennsylvania Colonization Society. It was headed by the Presbyterian Prelate. The second was called the Mississippi Colonization Society. The third was called the American Colonization Society. That society was a conglomeration of many societies. The Pennsylvania Society formed a group. They're the one appointed, there's one who appointed Thomas Buchanan. You see that?
Yes.
Thomas Buchanan headed that, and he came in 1835, he was appointed 27 years old. And he came to Bassa Cove, Grand Bassa today. So the city Buchanan came from Thomas Buchanan. He headed that team to Bassa. So the New York team moved to Bassa. The Mississippi team moved to Sino. And the American colonization came to Monserrato County. Those 3 colonization societies came with what intent? But let me leave the intent. I'm talking about God's command. While they were in Missouri, they began to pray. there were several persons. If you heard the history, will tell you that men like James Thompson, John Cower, Ebenezer Burgess, those guys. Thompson was a member of the Bible Society of New York. Ebenezer was part of the quartet of New York, and Cower was an elder. So they begin to pray, God, where do we go? Even though they want to resettle us, but where do we go? And they started to pray in the prayer room in 1816. God spoke. Now, many of you don't believe in prophetic word. It started a long time. God showed up in the midst of those slaves and said to them, I'm taking you to a land.
I'm taking you to a land.
And let me say to you today, history will say that, and you will read that. It's in the archive that the Spirit of God said to them that one, I will take you to a land that is free. The land will be free. Two, the land shall be called Green Coast.
Yes.
The land, out of that land, my name shall be spread to the rest of the world. I shall be unto them as I was unto Jacob. When you've reached the land, none shall die, for thou shalt live free and live my name. So 6 different prophetic words came on 1816. So if you consider 1816, when the prophetic word came, we are 205 years old by spiritual birth.
By spiritual birth.
Yes, 1816.
Yeah.
So as they move along 1821, they left February 6, 1820. From there, the first ship sailed for America. When they got on ship, on board that ship, they formed this nation in a mind. If we find Green Coast, we'll call it a name, 1821. Then 1847, when they found the land, became a nation, they announced us, we are 174 years old. So let's go back to where we came from. So they formed the nation and said, let's go. But they kept those prophetic declarations. They kept them. So when the ship sailed, February 16, 1820, the first ship left America with 86 persons on board. They did not land in Liberia. And that's why it's important that we raise a generation, Pastor. They landed in Nigeria. Abayormi is where they landed. So if you check Nigeria today, people from Abayormi, Sierra Leone, they got intertwined, especially those from Sierra Leone.
Yes.
So they settled in Abayormi. But then Ebenezer and Julia Ashman, Deacon Ashman, they were concerned about that prophetic word. 25 persons died within 24 hours. Then he said, the prophecy said, none shall die in the land. So they sailed southward and went to Lions Mountain, what you call Sherbrooke Island, Sierra Leone today. Sierra Leone called Lions Mountain in the 1820s. And they settled there. 36 persons died within 72 hours. There they said, no. If this is God speaking to us, I'm going back to by God's command. I want to keep this in mind. And he said, if this is the land, we shouldn't die.
No, we shouldn't
so
die.
they sailed along eastward. As they sailed along, they hit along the bank of a small island. And they met an old man called Doiseau, Chief Doiseau. Many Liberians don't know that island was called Doiseau Island. And I thank God for Ellen Johnson, who just named the new bridge Doiseau Bridge, because the history had lost the old man.
Oh, yeah.
It was not called Providence Island. But 1821, they said, wherever we find, it will be a home of providence. Some we didn't survive in Abayormi, we didn't survive in the Lions Mountain. Wherever God is taken is a place of providence. So they came and hit against the place. It was a small island with old man Chief Doiseau, who welcomed them. They settled down the island. They spent 3 days on the island. Then Judah Ashman crossed the island and entered the mainland to seek the face of God. And asked the prophet for 7 days, if none die here, if I don't die there, then this is the land. So Judah Ashman walked up the hill, up among the forest, and settled down over the rocks. He was there for 3 days. The people on the island worried about him. He also there praying. At the end of 72 hours, nobody died. He was saved. So he built a rock. He built an altar. He said, upon this we'll build a temple for you, where Providence Baptist is today. There where he built a stone. He came back and they celebrated. That's why they call it Ashman Street, because he founded that place. There where he lived for 3 days. So he went back and said, we have found a land. We'll call it Providence. So God has called Providence. And they moved in and settled in the land. What was the purpose of settling in here? If you go back to the history, they said, when God showed the land, it would be a place for the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the sharing of civilization and Christianity to the rest of Black Africa. That's the purpose for forming the nation Liberia. It was a free land, and that land was formed. So we started there. Then after 10, 20 years of formation, the Portuguese started to move around to take over land. They had Congo, Guinea, in Equatorial Guinea. It was called Fanadapo then.
Yeah.
The French began to move around the West. British started to move around. Everybody started, territorial expansionism.
Yeah.
They started to take territories and seize, and Liberia was left out. In fact, several times they threatened to seize Liberia because the people who were here were free slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So the free slaves were here and nobody else. But then the France, the Portuguese, and the British knew that these guys are from America. In fact, when they followed them, most of their way of life, the name of the places were named after villages and cities and counties in America.
Yeah.
So there was an assumption that there's an American allied territory. So they didn't trouble us. Nevertheless, the Americans themselves were not supporting us. So the Commonwealth decided, look, the only way we will be known and have recognition is to announce our independence.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just being here. So they started the process of independence in 1846. 1846, it was announced that let's have a consensus. So the first referendum was held Monday, July 13, 1846. The first meeting was held concerning referendum. October 27, Tuesday, October 27 was the first referendum, 1846 in Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it was ended, the president spoke November 19. He delivered a speech to the country that yes, this is the result of what has happened. We want to make ourselves a country. They put a committee together at work. June 8, 1847, the first Thanksgiving service was held across the nation to thank God that we have agreed by referendum and proclamation that we'll make ourselves a nation.
Yeah.
On July 26, 1847, Jacob David Pratt, representing Sando County, stood up. But then the chairperson of the Commonwealth, Samuel Benedict, had gone to America. So Jacob Pratt, the Secretary General, was empowered to speak. So he stood up and spoke to the word. And I bring that word to you today, like Liberian, all of you listen to me. He said, we the people of the Commonwealth, with gratitude to God,
yes,
for the goodness of the Christian religion and the political religion, do hereby for ourselves and posterity, for justice, domestic peace, and unity, agree and seal our sign as and call ourselves a nation. Did you hear that? And honor the Star Republic of Liberia, and for which we ordain and seal today. Unquote. So when we announce ourselves to the people, we didn't announce ourselves on Christian principle. We announced ourselves as a Christian nation. It is an honest statement, ladies and gentlemen, to always say we're found on Christian principle. You have to correct that. Go back to the preamble. I just read to you the preamble for your history. So that's what he announced to the world. When he announced to the world, all the representatives at that point, Monrovia County had Hilary Teach, John Day, J.F. Gissing, Ella Lewis. Sando County had David Pratt, Samuel Benedict, and Joseph Pratt. And Grandfather Hadaka, Amos, Heron, Ephraim Tyler. And so everybody, those are all Christians. They signed our Declaration of Independence. And they announced to the world we are a Christian nation. Did you hear what I said? So when a nation comes by God's command, we did not create it. It was not by political maneuvering. It was by divine orchestration.
Oh, please.
It was by divine orchestration that God made us. And God ordered the steps of those, our forefathers. And I bring it to you today. And all of you who are attempting to change our identity, remember Proverbs 22:28. Remove not the ancient landmark which your fathers have set. And I realize you don't need to read that. And what happened to us? So we became a nation from that 1847. Listen to me very keenly. When we became 100 years old, 1947, it was our centennial celebration. Three things happened in Liberia. We built temple religion. What you call Centennial Pavilion today was called temple religion.
Temple of religion?
Yes, it was built in 1947 for the celebration of our centennial existence. Why? So that every president that will be elected will be inaugurated in our home and take the oath of office. So on that day, three things were done. One, the Bible was declared the only means of oath of office for any president of the Republic of Liberia. The Bible was declared major subject of public school. Psalm 121 was adopted as the nation's psalm. It was sang in school. It was recited at university. That was some of the prerequisites for graduation at KG level. It was written. Well, how did we reach here?
With hearts and hand, our country cost defending, we'll the